Hi guys and welcome back to Is It Worth It Reviews. Today we are going to talk about one very special product called LAiV Harmony DAC. And this is a device according to my own taste. It's a standalone DAC, but what makes it special is its price to performance ratio, which is fantastic even though Harmony DAC is not cheap by any means. It's actually $2,700, which is a very high price, yet it achieves to sound more expensive than it really is. And I'm telling you this right out of the bat. This company and this DAC, it's going to be a hype train. Just remember, you saw it here first, with the Lord of the DACs. Well, technically I'm not really the first one to review it, but hey, this is web, I can say whatever I want. So let's start from the brand first. This is a LAiV brand that was recently established, and I personally stumbled upon it through my contact Mr. Wang, that I already know from cooperating with B-Technic online shop and reviews for LHY linear power supply and LHY audiophile switch. And also, Wang worked with Mr. Alvin of Vinshine Audio. So there's like decent history behind this contact. And aside Wang himself, I'm told that some seasoned engineers are working on this brand and in this company. And that includes engineers that worked with Philips, you know, just the guys that invented a lot of digital standards that we use nowadays. But I don't like talking about the background of the company that much and the engineers. All I wanted to say is that this is shaping up to be one serious brand that will shake up the market of DACs, and later on they'll introduce a streamer, a preamp, and some very interesting Class D GUN monoblock amps. But back to the Harmony DAC itself, I was hooked quickly. First of all, it's an R2R DAC. And you probably know that I love R2R technology for its sound and its specific tonal character. Second of all, just one look inside the device and how it was made. And they used modular design, which has its advantages. So it's easy to repair, and it's also intended to be easily upgradable without you having to change the whole device itself, like with many other DACs, because usually PCB board is huge and it takes the whole device, but here you could upgrade just R2R modules or just some part of power supply or signal processing, and it's a very interesting design. But aside from it being interesting, you can see how much care and attention went into building this one. R2R modules themselves are enclosed in like aluminum casing, and I don't know if it's for cooling or just cool factor or easier replacement if that is needed, but it looks so neat and premium. Resistors used in this R2R design, of course, are of a really high precision, I think 0.01 or something like that. You can go to the website, it's pretty nice, everything is laid out nicely there, and you can see tech specs if you're interested in that. But for now, we are moving to connectivity to the back of the unit, and as I said, this is just a standalone DAC. It doesn't have anything but digital inputs and set of analog line level outputs. And as for the inputs, we have basically everything we need. There's USB, coaxial, optical, and I2S. Interesting thing about I2S is that it possesses 8 different modes of operation. So you should be able to adjust this DAC to receive basically any I2S signal from any source, no matter what standard and pinout was used. Personally, I tried it with Eversolo DMP A8, and they matched immediately out of the box. I didn't even have to browse through these different modes. And on the analog output side, we have both RCA single-ended outputs and XLR balanced. These are line level outputs, they're fixed, there is no volume attenuation or any preamp functionality on this one. Then in the front, you can see that there is one big monochromatic OLED display and few different buttons, and this one knob that lets you browse through options and menus. It clicks too, there is one button here, but all of that is also easily done by using a remote. And the remote, like the main unit itself, is high quality aluminum build, machined, milled out of one big piece of aluminum. Now you can choose either black or silver color, and both the unit and remote will be of the same color. But then these buttons and these details on the unit itself are always this like raw brass color. I'm not sure if this is real brass or aluminum colored this way, but it doesn't matter really. What's important is that material is of a high quality, the finish is of a high quality, everything works and feels great, and as I said, it looks a little bit blingy. And styling is of course a subjective thing, it's a matter of taste, but I think that the bling factor is like moderately applied. It's not too much or anything. Especially in real life, once you put it into the shelf, it looks nice. I actually like these brass looking accents, and in this case in particular I actually do think that they add to some slightly premium feel of the unit. But let me mention some important features, like for example you being able to choose oversampling or non-oversampling modes. And personally, I do prefer oversampling mode. To my ears, it sounds a little bit tidier, cleaner and more revealing, without any artificial additions to the sound. NOS is a bit tamer and more closed off in highs, and it's softer, but at the same time not as grippy and as revealing. It's very easy to change them just using one button on your remote control, so it's easy to test for yourself. You can also change the phase of the output signal and dim the screen in one of 3 levels, turn it off or turn it on, put a delay after how many seconds it will turn off automatically, and all of these small features piled together increase the comfort of using this DAC, and I like that. As soon as I hooked Harmony DAC into my system, I realized that this is one highly performant DAC. Now, there's not much to talk about tonality in terms of frequency spectrum, because everything sounds very neutral to my ears. Bassline, mids, highs, everything is like really neutral, and you wouldn't call this one bassy or bright or dark or anything like that. It's just perfectly well balanced and tonally neutral. But there are of course other things that influence the sound fidelity and how we perceive tonal character of a DAC that are not related to the frequency response itself. And one of the first things that I noticed with this DAC is how actually open and resolving and highly revealing it sounds. And especially in the mid-range, it's actually very resolving across the board, but I first noticed it in the mid-range. Everything from vocals and the richness of any vocal or any other instrument, like strings and their micro vibrations and upper harmonics that give color and realistic tone and tone texturing, that sounds like bare open in front of you. And also, yeah, wind instruments like saxophone or trumpets, for example. You know how they are a mix of just full-bodied smooth tone, but they also have that very textury, very sandy-like layer to them that makes them sound very realistic. And with Harmony DAC, all of that was immediately obvious in the sound. But the thing is, like with most R2R DACs, especially the great ones, is that all of that resolution and those details and that revealing nature, it doesn't come at the expense of sound being natural. Like digital sharpness or edginess or tones sounding over-etched is just not something that you will encounter with this DAC. We are talking about pure resolution and information in its most natural form. Next, the sound staging is, once again, like with every great R2R DAC, sound staging is pretty great. The sound stage is big in all directions, wide, tall, deep. There is great sense of three-dimensionality and layering and separation between instruments. It's just a great, big, spacious soundstage. But then, like cherry on the top, when we talk about dynamics, Harmony DAC has great speed and snap and attack, and it sounds very alive, very in your room, live music, engaging with plenty of energy and attack. And all of that combined together makes for a really realistic sounds, really realistic and engaging sounding DAC. Take any tone, any instrument or any vocal, and it will sound very believable, very dense, and it will have that sense of dimension that is not just flat like you are looking on the 2D screen, but there's that nice palpable three-dimensionality for every tone. And then space around those tones and separation between them is big and just airy and nice. And finally, when it comes to dynamics, when it comes to fast pace, this is one speedy, engaging and vigorous sounding DAC, which is not always the case with R2Rs, that can be a little bit soft or on a slightly sluggish or warmish side, like vintage kind of sound, but it's not like that with Harmony DAC. It's a combo of really high resolution, highly revealing, dense and palpable sound with great spaciousness, but tones are very snappy, very focused and precise, and there is no softness and haziness to talk about. But to really assess any component's worth, you have to compare it with something else that you know is pretty great. And for that, I started with Gustard R26, which is also an R2R DAC, and it's my favorite DAC below $2,000 among the ones that I've tested, of course. I was listening to Harmony DAC for a week or so, and I got used to its really great sound. So when I switched to Gustard R26 and compared them directly, I could immediately notice that R26 is not as revealing and not as informative across the frequency spectrum. Starting with the bass line, where Gustard has great sense of weight and palpability, but compared directly to Harmony DAC, it doesn't have control and grip, and it doesn't reveal as much texture of bass notes as Harmony DAC. Basically, it feels a bit more bloated and not as defined in the bass region. Then in the mid-range, where we talk about vocals and those wind instruments and guitar strings, etc., once again, Harmony DAC is simply more revealing. There is a sensation that you simply hear more of those upper harmonics that give nice texturing and nice harmonic richness to tones. Gustard R26 compared directly to Harmony sounds like slightly simplified version of the same tones. And the difference is not huge, but it's noticeable. But of course, to notice that, the rest of the system has to be equally great too. Finally, talking about the sound stages, at first moment, at the first listen, I thought, yeah, this is the same, this is quite similar. But when I gave it a little bit more attention and more of a critical listen, I realized that if anything, Harmony DAC actually has slightly wider and slightly taller, equally deep soundstage as Gustard R26. So to wrap this up, the Harmony DAC is clearly a better sounding DAC of the two, as it should be since it costs more, but that's not always the case, because R26 on its own is a fantastic device, but Harmony DAC is simply a better one. Now lastly, I also compared it to my own do-it-yourself tube DAC called Lampucera that you might be familiar with if you follow my channel regularly. It's basically a do-it-yourself DAC that is based on some Lampizator designs, and then I pimped it up with really high quality components. But that's not important as much as the fact that my do-it-yourself tube DAC is fully on pair with Lampizator Baltic 3 that I also reviewed here on the channel, and depending on the market, that one goes for 5,000 to 6,000 US dollars or euros, and it's a fantastic sounding tube DAC, highly regarded by audiophiles across the world for its lush, huge, very natural holographic sound, and I myself am the fan of that kind of sound, and I love Lampizator DACs and my own do-it-yourself effort on that front. And here I can immediately say that Harmony DAC fights on equal footing and on the same level with both Lampizator Baltic 3 and my own tube DAC. All of these three are the same tier, extremely high tier DACs with some differences that I'll try to explain here. So for example, if you go for Lampizator Baltic 3, you will get slightly bigger and more bloomy, more flowery kind of sound with that holographic kind of presentations where all tones, instruments and vocals appear to be a little bit bigger. But there is also certain softness and sensation of diffused sound with that tube DAC that you don't get with Harmony DAC. This one, Harmony DAC, has slightly smaller soundstage, but tones are more dense, they're more palpable and focused better. Just sheer information retrieval and resolution is equally good on Harmony DAC as it is on Baltic 3. They're equally open and airy, and layering is fantastic, but that tone focus and definition is better with Harmony DAC. Lampizator, as I said, on the other hand, sounds more bloomy and more diffused and more holographic, but not as dense and focused. One last thing is when it comes to dynamics, one thing that I didn't like about Baltic 3 is that it sounded kinda soft and mellow, especially in the bass line where it lacked grunt and kick and palpability. The bass was kinda soft and shallow in a way, and you don't have that problem with Harmony DAC here. This one has great attack and punch and solidity in its bass line that is fully matching my own do-it-yourself tube DAC with like oversized 3 linear power supplies and fantastic output stage. But this one is matching it in that regard, while actually sounding slightly more informative and open and revealing in the mid-range, the same way that Baltic 3 sounded slightly more open and revealing and airy than my own do-it-yourself effort. But my point here is not to prove which one of these three is best. They're all fantastic high-endish kind of DACs. They are slightly different and they have slightly different qualities. But the thing is that Harmony DAC here is achieving that level of performance. It's in the exact same tier with Baltic 3 for half the price. Some of you would prefer that more flowery, more holographic and bloomy kind of sound of Baltic 3. Some of you would definitely prefer more focused and denser and like more wiry and precise kind of sound of Harmony DAC with better engagement, better drive, but still pretty great sound staging and open sound that is plenty natural, because after all this is R2R, which actually leads me to the conclusion. This is a device that is by no means cheap, at least in my eyes, and guys, I'm from Serbia, where average income is less than 1/3 of the price of Harmony DAC. So in my eyes and in my world, this is a very expensive product. It's a standalone DAC that has really high price tag. But that aside, when I compare it to all other DACs on the market, I cannot get to the same level of performance with a more affordable model. Fantastic Gustard R26 cannot match what this one is doing. On the other hand, Harmony DAC can match the tier of Lampizator Baltic 3. And I haven't personally reviewed something like Dana Fripp's Terminator, but some other reviews online indicate that it's matching Terminator Plus in terms of performance too. And believe me, this DAC is going to generate some serious hype. Even though it's this expensive, it actually sounds even better when you gauge it on the current market, current price to performance ratios offered by other brands. It actually offers sound that up until now I don't think you could purchase for this amount of money. And I'm telling you, both this DAC and this brand are going places, and I would bet that there's hype train incoming about Harmony DAC, and some other reviewers that maybe come from overpriced, expensive mainstream brands are soon going to rave about how high-end it sounds for such an affordable price. But this hype train, unlike some others, is going to actually be deserved. And that would be all for today, guys. If you have any comments about the DAC itself, about my reviews, my t-shirts or my nose, feel free to write down below in the comments. Times are hard and venting is good. I do it all the time here in these videos. See you next time.